All right, let's turn now to the potential companies that could become targets of this new plan and discuss whether the government can really enforce those march-in rights. Joining us now, Jared Holz, healthcare equity strategist at Mizuho, and Evan Seigerman, biotech analyst at BMO Capital Markets. Welcome to both of you. Jared, let me start with you. I think I just described sort of the process that could be at work here. And on the one hand, you would say, well, how could the government get away with doing that, coming in and asserting that we're going to take over this patent, or if that's what they're saying they're going to do, unless you lower the price? On the other hand, there is a sympathetic side to this that says, well, hell, if I, the taxpayer, have paid to develop this medicine, paid a lot of money, if my tax money is gone to that, and now the pharmaceutical company is charging $140,000 for a treatment of a prostate cancer drug. That doesn't feel right to me. And they get to keep all the profits? I'm getting stiffed at both ends.
Tyler, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I think this is a little bit of a slippery slope, obviously, for large cap pharma and biotech. These march-in rights, though, on the positive end of the spectrum, are not really limited to this one sector. I think it's much broader. It's going to go into the technology industry and many others.
Technology, defense, whatever. Yeah, sure.
So it's much broader in scale than just this one industry group, which I think is good, because we're always talking about how pharma seems to be the target of the government every other week. As I look across, the space with respect to large cap pharmaceuticals and biotech, not really sure that there are that many drugs that have been co-founded or co-developed with material government funding. And if that's right, maybe the list of drugs that the government is going to go after in this case in order to secure the patents back is not going to be so vast. And if that's true, maybe this is not a huge issue. But to Bertha's point earlier, it obviously adds on to the IRA. And from a political standpoint, it's clear where the government's at here.
Evan, let me ask you, is this essentially, and Jared just said it seems pretty political to him, is this essentially political theater that's going on here, number one? And number two, it would occur to me that one of the targets here, or a possible one, would be Pfizer and Moderna, whose COVID vaccines were heavily financed by the taxpayer.
Well, there's a few questions there. First of all, as a political theater, we are heading into an election year, so I'm sure there's some more posturing around drug pricing. Biden got the win against the pharma sector with the IRA, and this is kind of continuing that theme. In terms of Pfizer and Moderna, I think, Pfizer, I don't know if they actually took much funding up front. It was just some pre-funded contracts. But really, the NIH does have a role in helping see these technologies, but these pharmaceutical companies put up billions of dollars at risk to actually develop the drugs. You don't want the NIH developing drugs. They'll never get anything done.
Evan, who's most at risk in terms of potential research and development? Maybe there's some companies that come to mind, maybe biotechs, broadly speaking, maybe, how would you be thinking through this as an investor?
Well, if this were to actually happen, I think the entire sector could be at risk, because who knows at what level the NIH or kind of the march-in rights would apply. Would it be some early technology like the basis of mRNA for the vaccines? Would it be part of an antibody drug conjugate? So it could be widely applicable, probably in the specialty therapeutic space. So think cancer drug manufacturers, inflammation drug manufacturers. So maybe AbbVie, potentially Merck, Bristol.
And so what should those companies then do? What is anyone going to do other than kind of wait for more details? And would we expect the Supreme Court to get involved at some point, or no?
I mean, I don't know if the Supreme Court gets involved, but I'm sure if this went through, there would be several lawsuits. I think the companies need to keep doing what they're doing. This is only a proposal. This isn't actually necessarily going to happen, but it really takes into account whether or not these companies want to use the NIH and kind of funding and research from the NIH to help, bring forward some of their R&D efforts. They may kind of choose not to use that, do their own stuff internally, and take them out completely, which would be a shame, because there's a lot of good research coming out of the NIH.